What's up? Welcome back to Cooking with my cookbook authors. Today we're cooking up some ceviche with Professor Robert Bradley, whose new cookbook, Eating Peru, is out now. Go check it out. If you're interested in getting a copy of the book for free, subscribe to the channel and comment on this video. The first 100 people to subscribe and comment will be entered to win Eating Peru. Subscribe now. You want the book, don't you? Don't you want the book? You better subscribe and comment. Subscribe and comment. Let's do this. I have Robert. Robert, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
You have traveled all over Peru. Your book, Eating Peru, Gastronomic Journey, is out now. I'm going to make your ceviche out of your book here in a little bit. But first off, how did you come to write this book? Why are you traveling all around Peru?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was kind of a long journey. I mean, I was a wine salesman for years in New York and New Jersey, and after I got out of the military, after I got out of the Marine Corps, and at some point in my career, it just got to a point where I thought it was getting too corporate. I started out selling these name brand wines, these boutique wineries, and then I just sort of moved away from that. I worked for Robert Mondavi Winery when they were family owned, and then they got bought out. I think Canandaigua bought them. But it became bigger, and I know it's changed now. I've had conversations with people. I think it's gone back to more boutique wines, which I'm really happy about. But I remember I went on a vacation to Belize, and I wanted to get away from wine. Central America is not really a great wine destination. And I was on a pyramid in Belize, in St. Antonich. I looked down, saw the archaeologists, and I'm like, I want to do that. And so I went back to school. I went to Columbia. My advisor, Esther Pastore, I said, hey, I want to get in the master's program. She said, no. I took a class and got an A in that. And then she said, okay. And then I told her I want to get in the PhD program later. And she said, no. But she said, if you go to northeastern Peru, go check out this Chachapoya culture. Maybe I'll think about it. So I wound up on a Fokker turboprop flying into Cajamarca with no Spanish. And I ultimately wound up in a town with more horses than people. And it just all worked out after that. And, I noticed when I was out doing my archaeology, I'd be out in the northeastern cloud forest. When I'd come down to the coast, my food was so good. And I had that background of being in the wine business, and I just knew good food. I mean, I knew chefs. I would sit at the bar and try different things. And I thought, well, this place is amazing. How come I don't know about this? I mean, just the little things. On the coast, they get fresh bread delivered 2 times a day. You have kids on bicycles. And the fish is just remarkable because they just pulled it out of the ocean. And more, I mean, I try to publish more things about, northeastern archaeology. And that's pretty esoteric. I mean, it's high mountain cloud forest. It's not really, I didn't find the audience for it. Let's put it that way. So I started to drift more towards writing about Peru and the food and the culture, because what I found fascinating is ancient Peruvians ate really well. I mean, it's incredible. Ancient coastal Peruvians had, these incredible diet. I mean, that I don't think you can really find any other place in the world. And that became sort of my field of research and interest.
Nice. And it's a very diverse ecosystem, Peru, in and of itself.
Yeah, it's got, I think you could say it's up there in one of the top. If you took a certain amount of geography in Peru, a 50-mile stretch, you might see more microclimates than any other place on the planet. I mean, it's amazing. You can go from the desert, and you'll be alpine, then you'll be high mountain cloud forest, then you'll be in the jungle. And you could do that in a very, very short period of time. It's truly remarkable.
You don't think about just the general public, the world culinary scene, that Peru would be this place that would emerge as, this very diamond in the rough of just...
Certainly, if you go 20 years back, no, it wasn't really on the radar. That's why it sort of shocked me. But recently, for the past 8-9 years, it's become the #1 food destination. It's sort of gotten discovered. I mean, some of these celebrity chefs have blown up, like Gaston Apurio, Virgilio Martinez, Nobu Matsuhisa. He actually trained in Peru. He came over in the 70s and, did all his things with, Japanese food that basically translated into Nikkei food in Peru. Nikkei food is like a fusion of Japanese Peruvian. But the thing that he trained with is Peru, has one of, or if not the most prolific fishing ground in the world. As I said, we were talking earlier, but the Humboldt Current comes up from Antarctica, and you have this cold, deeply rich, dark water that just has all these amazing fish in it. And Peru's gone to war over their fishing grounds, because it's so important to them. And the chefs like Nobu and the chefs, along the coast take advantage of this, obviously, because the seafood is so fresh. And I think that's the reason when we make ceviche. I think that's the reason that Peruvian ceviche is so good, is the fact that the fish is so fresh. Yeah, that's number one. That's it. If you pull it out of the ocean and you make it there, you're going to have great raw fish.
Yeah. So the book is actually more of stories and more of an actual book that just happens to have some recipes in it. Where did the recipes develop from that are in the book?
Yeah, developed from basically me being in Peru. My wife's Peruvian. I married my wife, and then I would take the kids down. First it was Gabriella. We have three: Gabriella, Moche, and Donovan. But I would take Gabriella down first, and I love markets. I mean, I love markets, and especially in Latin America. I mean, it's just, if you go to a market every day and you buy food and you get to know the people, you get treated so well because, they're making money, you're making money, they know what you want. It's a wonderful place to go. And I would get up.
We don't really get in the United States.
No, you don't. It's unfortunate. So we used to stay in this town called Huanchaco because, like I said, I'd go off and do work in the mountains and come back down. And Huanchaco is a beautiful little fishing village. It's a tourist destination too, lots of surfers. And I would go to the market in the morning and KI, what do you have? And I would get, typically a fish, ojo de uva, or, that's a Medusa fish. They get that name. It's a deep water fish, but they eat the Medusa jellyfish. And I would get that and bring it home and, make the food. And that's, I would cook for, my wife's family. I mean, lomo saltado, which is basically a Peruvian stir fry with rice and French fries, but it's basically taking steak, red onion, tomatoes, maybe a little soy sauce, maybe throw in a shot of Pisco. There's different things that you can do with it. Ají amarillo, capsicum bacatum, I guess it is. That's the scientific name for it. Ají amarillo, which isn't yellow, it's actually orange, is something that's in so many Peruvian dishes. And you don't really get it outside of Peru fresh. I mean, they might grow it, I'd say, in Florida. I grow it in my backyard.
And that's the pepper paste, right?
Yeah, well, there's nothing like them fresh. I mean, fresh, they're just incredible. I mean, it's a flavor agent. It's not a hot pepper. It's just a flavorful one. Like I said, when I do something here, if I can't get them, I use Rio Grande chilies, not something really hot. But then that's
little sweet,
yeah, it
little
just gives
spice,
it a nice
mostly pepper flavor.
Yeah, really a nice kind of almost fruity type flavor because, basically peppers are fruit, but
it is a fruit.
Yeah. So, then I do the stir fry for the family. And then with Pisco, I mean, I would make my Pisco sours. I mean, I love making Pisco sours. And, Pisco sour supposedly was invented in the Morris Bar, 1922, 23, somewhere right around there.
So walk me through that. What is that?
Oh, a Pisco sour is a phenomenal drink. I mean, it's kind of a foo-foo drink because there's a lot of work to it. I mean, you can make a Pisco sour and cut corners, but then you got not a good Pisco sour. So,
so how do we make a good Pisco sour?
Okay, so, every time I go back and forth to Peru, last time I was there seems to be this upping the ante. It used to be 3 shots of Pisco. Now Pisco it's a aguardiente de uva, so it's basically a grape brandy. In Peru, you're not allowed to age grape brandy in oak because it doesn't need it. The grapes are so sweet, they're so flavorful, they make it illegal. You can't call it Pisco if you do. But it's all artisanal Pisco. They have to distill it to proof. They can't add water. I mean, Peruvian Pisco is a really incredible thing. The most common grape that they use is Quebranta, and that's supposedly not as good as some of the other aromatic grapes. There are aromatic grapes which would make what you would think sipping Pisco. So it's like with tequila, you get añejos. You get tequilas that you probably wouldn't want to make a margarita with. So it's the same thing with making a pisco sour, or with using pisco or using a pisco sour. Use Quebranta, because I mean, you're adding other things. So like I said, in Peru, it's 3 shots. I've noticed people are starting to go to 3.5 shots, and I don't know where this is going to end, but it's probably just going to get more wonderful. Let's put it that way. So
they just need a bigger glass.
Yeah, but 3 shots is plenty because Pisco is normally around 80 proof, and you put 3 shots in. 1 shot of freshly squeezed key lime juice. You got to squeeze it then. You don't let it sit around. You just don't do that. Then you put in a 3/4 of shot of simple syrup, and I make my own simple syrup. So what I do is I'll take white sugar and distilled water, equal parts, like either a big cup or you can use a full measuring cup, equal parts, and I boil it down to half until I get a consistency I really like, and put it in the refrigerator for a little bit. So 3/4 of a shot of that. I mean, I wouldn't use any. It depends on the viscosity of the simple syrup.
The simple,
but that's something that you have to play around with. You have to do a few times to really get it down. And then 1 egg white, and
one egg white,
yeah,
classic.
And so you can put it in a blender, but that's sort of pretty barbaric. I mean, it's better to put some ice in a shaker,
shake it, froth it up,
shake it, and then boom, pour it out. It's definitely shaken, not stirred. I mean, a good pisco sour is shaken, not stirred. And if you ever, let me know if you're going to Peru, Rayshawn. I'll set you up. But there's a place called Museo de Pisco, and those guys shaking the things. They're artists. I mean, and it's a lot of work. You shake it for 5 minutes because you want to get a froth on the top,
and then get it all to blend.
Right, it should be kind of lighter green towards the bottom, and then the top should be white with a froth, and then you put 3 or 4 shots of bitters on top, and that's your pisco sour. That's a pisco sour. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, another thing that's coming up. Well, I'm getting off the topic, but another thing that's really made it started with Nuevo Andean cuisine in the 90s is a coca sour. So what they do is they take coca leaves, and you take coca leaves.
Coca sour.
Yeah, coca sour.
See, and that's that's what we all really knew Peru for,
Yeah, well, I could go on. I could go on for hours about coca. I mean, the 216 varieties of coca in the world, 4 of them that have cocaine in them are all from South America, and the Inca called one particular type tupa coca, which means royal coca. So that's the one that you want to chew. Now, I love chewing coca. I give classes to my students on chewing coca. That's perfectly legal in Andean countries. Cocaine is an abomination. It was developed by a German chemist in 1865. It was downhill ever since. But coca had been around for 10,000 years in a very benign, as a
medicine,
food.
as an herb, as food.
Yeah, it was food, basically. I mean, and it gets rid of your hunger and your thirst, and it gets you to walk in the Andes. But with Nuevo Andean cuisine, what they did was they put the coca into the pisco, and you steep it in there for about 7 days, a week more or less. It'll turn the coca or the pisco green, and it's right now, if you go to Museo de Pisco or anywhere in Cusco, it's starting to become very popular. You get a coca sour. So the same way you're making it, you're just making it with the steep coca. Although with the coca sour, you don't use bitters at the top. You put a coca leaf into the froth. And that is one of my favorite drinks in the world. I love that. I mean, I just think there's nothing
and we literally are going to have to go to Peru to get it, huh?
Yeah, you got, I hate to say it, but even, a lot of times because I'm, on the southern border, I fly through Mexico City through DF to go down to Peru. And every time I come back, I have coca leaf tea for, the secretaries in our office, the administrative assistants. And the past few years, it's getting confiscated. Those dogs are really good. They're taking my tea. And
they're taking the tea.
Yeah, the tea. And that's kind of a shame. Because, like I
you
said,
would think they'd be smelling for more of the chemicals and then the actual,
maybe it gives them some work. But I mean, that whole thing is just, it's ridiculous. But anyhow, I could go on and on and on about it.
Anyway, let's make some ceviche.
Sure. Yeah, the red onions have sort of a bite to them, which is really good. Sometimes it's a little too much. So what I was doing in Peru, if I get one that I'm cutting and it's just like killing me, I soak it
Mm-hmm.
in. I soak it in water with salt and just take a little bit of the fire out of it and use that. That's one tip that I had with her. And the other thing, it's got the freshest fish you can get. With my when we'd stay in not in Huanchaco, but another town called Pimentel along the coast. There's these cabalitos de tortura. They're reed boats, and they still it's an active fleet of pre-Columbian craft that go out fishing every day. Well, they actually go out at night and they come in early in the morning. But everything's the same except when they tie up the reeds, they tie them up with nylon now, and they put plastic soda bottles in to keep it floating because reed boats
Mm.
get waterlogged, and sooner or later they're gonna sink. And they want to make them last as long as they possibly can. But I've run down to the beach with these guys coming in with other, there's people that are restaurateurs. You run down, you can buy fish right there, and
Just right off the boat.
yeah, there's nothing like it. Also near Pimentel, there's a place called Terminal Santa Rosa, and I write about that in my book. I mean, that place was just an epiphany for me because my mother-in-law and my wife's family told me about it. And what is a big parking garage? So it's this huge kind of concrete parking garage with tractor trailers, lots of blue bins full of fish. So all the boats come into that area, they unload the fish. They come into the Port Santa Rosa, they unload the fish. This stuff has just come in from the trailers. They start sorting it out on the trucks to take to Trujillo, or probably Lima's the ultimate destination, but to start trucking it around. So you can buy retail before they actually ship it to Lima. So you're getting this fish, and these are big fish. They'll have robalo, which is snook. They'll have linguada, huge flounder. They'll have ojo de uva, the Medusa fish I mentioned. They'll have all these fish. And once you go in there and they figure, okay, this is a gringo who's going to buy some fish. And, as we said, gringo has no negative connotation in Peru, it just means foreigner. But when you go in there and they see you have the money, you're going to spend $50 to $100 on fish. Everybody's really nice. Everybody's like, okay, come on in. You can have it. And you can get everything cleaned. You can get it filleted, everything else it's probably a little more now, but around $2. And that would be for a big fish. And they'll save everything. Yeah, they'll save everything. They'll give you the fillets. If you want the head to make a soup and everything else, they'll do that. It's just a phenomenal place to go. And I would go there, get a big fish and, get it filleted, everything, come back, and then I'd make it for my family. When you go out in this Terminal Santa Rosa, because it is a popular place where the restaurateurs around that area buy their fish. There's all these people selling key limes and the ahis and all the things that you need to make ceviche. You don't really have to go anywhere else. Although there's a great market down the road on Monsefu, but that's another story.
There you go. Look up plane tickets to Peru.
It's worth it.
It's worth it. All right, so this probably isn't quite as fresh as the fish in Peru, but I do have some red snapper here.
It's great fish.
I've cut your recipe down to about a quarter because it's just me. So I got about half a pound of red snapper here. Then I got my sliced red onions, real thin, as instructed. I got my diced cilantro.
Great.
Probably a little too much there, but it's all right. Lime juice. We got a little under half a cup here.
That should be more than enough. Yeah.
More than enough. And I have a habanero to garnish with, or dice it up and toss it in there.
Yeah, no, habanero. Actually, habanero is a South American pepper. I mean, it comes from the lowland forests in South America. I mean, and by the way, if you read through my book, I mean, Tabasco, the chilies that they use in Tabasco are basically capsicum. I'm trying to remember the name. Chinese. It basically means Chinese, but that's a stupid name to give. It was some of those scientific names are absolutely ridiculous. Or tens, and both of those are they're related to habanero. So Tabasco is habanero, basically. It is, and it's funny. Why I see Tabasco habanero sauce, I'm like, oh well, that's
redundant.
They're saying the same thing, like doubly. It's kind of fascinating. But habaneros work just fine. You'll see different types of peppers. There's a couple on the coast, that are yellow, like a mochero. And then there's also another one that's orange, and these are really hot, super hot.
Mm. There's so many different peppers in the world. You'd probably find a new pepper every day if we were looking.
Right, and the shame is that Mexico is really good about recording peppers and where they're from and, different uses. Peru's behind on that because they have so many unique things and they just haven't I haven't seen a really good in-depth study.
Well, maybe the next book.
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to work with a botanist though to do that. Yeah, but,
It's all about the peppers. Peruvian peppers. Title.
yeah. Well, there's basically four types: the fructans, the chinese, the capsicum abactum, which is ají amarillo, and then there's the pubescens, which is rocoto. Have you seen a rocoto pepper?
No.
They call them manzanos in Mexico, but they come from Peru. It's like a bell pepper, and they're red and green and yellow. They're about half the size of a good-sized bell pepper, but they're hot, and they're incredible. And they actually do grow in the cold pretty well. So you'll see them all throughout Cusco and in the highlands.
Like up into the mountains, on the way up to the mountains.
Yeah. They can survive frosts and everything. I can't grow them here. It's too hot. And it's also, they do a little bit better at altitude. So, but you can buy them here. Every once in a while, you get them from Mexico.
Nice. All right. So we're going to walk me through here. I'm just going to dump this lime juice on, yeah?
Yeah, I wouldn't put all of it. I'd put I don't know, maybe 1/3 of that, maybe 1/4 of that, and just mix it up, with the spoon, with the fish. Yeah, a little more.
In we go. Ooh, a little more. There we go.
Yeah.
It's about half. It's about half of that. So that's about a quarter of a cup.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, you can't ruin fresh fish. It's kind of hard. The only thing you can do is cover it up too much. I mean, especially if it's really, really fresh.
Right. And how long do we let it sit in there?
Well, I mean, that's the funny thing. Not long. I mean, when the research for the book, most of the people that went to Lima, the Limeños, they were Europeans. So they used to make their ceviche with bitter orange. And there used to be tons of bitter orange trees throughout Peru. They're very rare.
Good.
Well, they're very rare now. There's one place called Huacho where I'm told you can still get ceviche made with bitter orange, but it's mostly all gone. And then if you read through the recipes, Fuentes, wrote this snapshot of mid-19th century Peru. They would soak it forever. I mean, in bitter orange, and that's just going to turn everything into mush.
Just the acid will just completely devour it, right?
Yeah, the Nikkei chefs they came in and they taught the Limeños like how to make ceviche right because the Japanese know fresh fish, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That makes sense to a certain point, but I would say people outside of Lima, the people like along the coast that had been there forever. I mean, Valderrama writes about this. It's like they used to have a thing, they'd call it lunch on an oar. So they would pull the fish out of the ocean and the fishermen would actually slice it up on an oar and actually eat it like that. So, for instance, my wife and her family, I mean, everything is fish. If they have a party, it's going to be fresh fish. My wife, if I bring home fish and and it's really good, if I go in the other room, she'll eat like 1/3 of it raw. I mean, that's just common. And that was there before the Japanese came in. But definitely the Japanese changed the style of like eating ceviche in Lima. That's for sure. I mean, but I mean, some of the things are verbally. But I mean, I try to do it as quickly as possible. Just get it, throw in the
onions.
The onions.
Onions going in.
Yeah.
Not quite as many.
Yeah, mix that up. Maybe add a little bit more juice. Some salt. Touch of pepper. Right. Typically, white pepper would be better, just aesthetically speaking. But you don't even need pepper. Where my wife's from, it's also served as you go farther north with zarandaja beans, which are these type of white beans. Interestingly enough,
there are beans in ceviche.
Yeah, the beans. It's way up north, and it's mostly around Piura, and there's a reason for that, because there's an Afro-Peruvian population there that came to Peru from Madagascar, and that's where those beans come from. And they brought the beans and started throwing it in ceviche. It's really kind of fantastic, to tell you the truth. Huh. But you'll see so many different variations. Everybody does it differently. The whole point, though, is the freshest white pepper. Yeah, you can use that. A little bit.
A little bit. So this is a fermented white pepper.
I don't,
It's
you know, that.
it's actually from a company called Burlap and Barrel. You ever heard of Burlap and Barrel?
No, but it sounds good. Try it.
So Burlap and Barrel sources all of their spices directly from farmers from around the world.
That sounds good to me.
So there's no middlemen, right?
That's good.
Who are taking all of the profit from the spices that these farmers are growing. He literally flies around the world personally and will shake almost every farmer's hand that he has their spices available. He's shooking their hand, and he pays them directly for
He's doing good. He's doing good work.
Spices.
He's doing good work.
Good guy. Burlap and Barrel.
He should work on coffee too.
He does do a little coffee. They're getting into coffee, I hear.
Yeah, because a lot of those growers should get more money. There's no doubt about it. But just some salt, and then I'd put hot pepper in.
All right, salt's going in there.
That's good.
And the pepper paste.
Is that habanero paste? Is that what you said, or is that I can't see if it's a cut up pot. Oh, the paste. If your fish is fresh enough, I wouldn't even bother with the paste. I don't see. A lot of times I put a criticism in the book, like people who use ají amarillo in Peruvian restaurants here, and I think they use a little too much. And if I'm in a market in Peru, like that market in Huanchaco or the one in Pimentel or Terminal Santa Rosa, there's lots of ways you can tell how fresh a fish is. You can look at the eyes of the fish if it's cloudy. You can look at the gills if it's really like dark red. I mean, for me, I like the smell test. I go down, stick my nose on the fish and see if I can smell any sort of death. It should smell like the ocean. And if it smells like the ocean, it's going to be great. There's, you've got a super, super fresh fish. And I think a lot of times, chefs here use ají amarillo just to hide just a little bit of that,
death.
That is, death. It's because, fish goes bad real quick.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't, if you're in a cevicheria, and by the way, in Peru, when I'm eating, and I typically have ceviche along the coast, if I'm eating a cevicheria, I like going earlier in the morning too. I like going 11 o'clock, just to get
it just came off the boat.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're chasing.
Well, I did buy this at the grocery store.
But go ahead. A little bit. I would say a little bit.
So I'm going to do like half of what I made here.
Yeah,
like,
that's fine.
Little dibby dab. All right, little in there, and then go ahead and throw my cilantro in too? Or do we just garnish?
No, I would put a little cilantro. Cilantro is pretty much good on anything.
There she goes.
And what, the habanero, Rayshawn, is that chopped up or is that just warm?
No, should I chop up a little and throw it in here?
Yeah, sometimes, a lot of times in Peru, what they'll do is do a little fancy carving with the pepper that they have and just leave it on top and let
made a little flour.
Well, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's great.
I am into heat, so I think I do want a little bit of my habanero in there.
Oh, go ahead, go for it.
Just for my own personal.
Yeah, I like that
taste.
too.
Little kick, little zing. Little more color. Oh.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, it smells good.
Yeah, now you're making me hungry.
I haven't had lunch yet either. This is literally going to be my aperitif for lunch. All right, so I think that's it.
Yeah, simpler is better. It's always better. Just, use what you got. Use the most simple ingredients. When you get, I go to Cusco a lot because I like taking the students around. I take them on hikes through the Andes. I've done Salcantay Pass 4 times and Asungate and Choqquequirao. Some of these sites that are they're a little difficult to get to, but it's kind of a fun trip. And I still love ceviche, but when I'm in the mountains, what you have is ceviche de trucha. So you have trout ceviche, and that's delicious.
Trout.
Yeah, trout. They have incredible trout in the mountains of Peru. Trout is obviously an invasive species, so you can have a lot of fun eating them because they don't really belong there. Trout ceviche is incredible. It's quite good. And when you're in the mountains, you don't want to get ceviche in the mountains, obviously, because the fish has to come from the coast. So you're talking about what, a day, 2 days, maybe,
just to get up there. What if can't they catch the trout in the mountain streams though?
Yeah, they catch the trout in the mountain streams. Yeah.
All right, I'm trying the ceviche. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. I wish you could try it with me.
Yeah, I wish I could too.
Here we go. Red snapper, Peruvian ceviche. Mmm.
It's just simplicity.
Oh, that is way better than I possibly could have thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, it's delicious. Absolutely delicious. Of the
Wow.
different types of fish, probably the one that's held in the most esteem is going to be a linguata flounder. I mean, a lot of the,
Flounder.
yeah,
Really?
flounder is, yeah, flounder. And then I would put up there grouper, grouper in northern Peru, they call it mero, robalo, snook. I mean, snook's incredible. And then ojo de uva, medusa fish, but it's almost in that order about the cost. And you're talking a few soles, so a few dollars more a pound as you move down. But
For the flounder versus what's the cheap fish? What's like? Is it the trout?
it's typically the smaller, more oily ones. But they're incredible too because or what's a few cheetah and basically sardines like mackerel type things. But the thing with them is I tried this one time with a recipe. I mean, Peru's full of a passion fruit, maracuyar, and it's got a very, very special flavor to it. I made ceviche using that with the darker fish, and that's delicious. I wouldn't use it with the firm white flesh fish because the flavor's
Fall
too
apart
subtle.
too much?
Yeah, but if you're using it with a more oily fish, which has a lot more intense flavors, mixing it in with maracuyar is really fascinating. And I've read some things, I haven't gotten any proof on it. I mean, you find like small fish bones in archaeological finds, but some people have said, I think Gaston Accordio put it on his menu at Lamar, that basically ceviche with maracuyar is a pre-Columbian dish. And like I said, I can't confirm that, but it sure sounds good to me. I mean, because they didn't have the lime. I mean, the key limes come in, but actually come from, the
Europe.
Middle East. They come from Arabia to the Spanish, and then the Spanish bring it over. And now that's the only limes really in Peru and Mexico. I mean, it's all over the place, but they didn't have those. So if they were making some sort of ceviche, besides the fact that they probably just ate raw fish, if they were making something mixed with like a citrus based thing to cook the fish a little bit,
That's it,
maracuyar
man.
would be a good guess.
Well, you're probably right.
Well,
So, anthropology is like being a detective for the past.
yeah. I mean, I love it. I mean, Peru's got so many of those things. Like, for instance, when they make the cabrito, the kid goat, which in northern Peru, and it's actually Lambayeque where it's the most famous, but it's a goat stew, kid goat. You cook it with ají amarillo again, and you cook it with this loche squash. Now, loche squash is only grown in that area in Peru, and it's not grown anywhere else in the world. And
No
I
way.
have, it's in my book. I have this conference of squash scholars, if you can believe there is a conference of squash scholars, and they write about loche being endemic to this one area, nowhere else in the world. And it's been cultivated there for 10,000 years. So my mother-in-law, and I know a chef, Ricardo Sulim Wong, he's a Tushan, so he's Chinese Peruvian. If you look at his name, Sulim, which is definitely pre-Columbian, Wong. Okay, so that's a great mix. But he says he would never make cabrito without loche. Loche has this banana type flavor to it. They all swear by loche. And
Swear by
unfortunately,
logic.
he lives in this town, which is 3 hours away from, Lambayeque. So he's got to get his loche driven to him. I mean, he gets somebody to put it on a bus and he gets the loche squash. So my mother-in-law would never make cabrito without loche. She said
Without
the
it.
sauce tastes like water. So,
You
but
gotta
there's
have
a,
it.
yeah,
Gotta
there's
have
a,
the loche.
yeah, there's lots of stuff like that that just, it's been around forever and there's a reason for it.
Awesome. So, where can? Oh, two questions. If you had to give advice to somebody who wanted to get into your field,
Mhm.
what advice would you give them?
Oh God, I mean, I don't know. I have to admit, it's really hard. I mean, I've blown out my knee on like muddy mountain fields, and the archaeo. Although it's stunningly beautiful, I've been in places where seen birds and animals that are just like better than anything you'd ever see in the zoo. If you really want to get into it, I would. Anthropology has become kind of weird, I'd say, in the past 20 years or so. I mean, people aren't doing really remote field work anymore, which is disappointing. Maybe you could go and do something in food studies. food studies that's why I sort of gravitated to it. It's kind of a new field, so it's not it's not something where these rigid rules and you have to do everything one way. You can kind of go off and do your own thing, and who knows how long that's going to stay. I mean, things tend to solidify, over time. But I would suggest finding. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You would suggest finding?
Yeah, I would suggest finding a good food studies program and, do something with that. I mean, you could do it through anthropology. I'm trying to think. Make sure if you're going to go get a PhD and do something, make sure your advisor is really good because you've got to work with them and there's nothing you can do about it. So make sure the person you get along with, it's kind of like the best boss you could ever have. Make sure you do that sort of thing. And
second question.
Mm-hmm.
What are you having for dinner tonight?
I was thinking about that. I have to go to the market. I don't know. I was thinking either buying steak or fish. But here, because even though we're close to South Padre, I'm like an hour and a half, and
still not close enough to the ocean, huh?
No, and red snapper here is like $30 a pound, and if I go if I smell it, it's going to smell a little decayed. It's been like kicking around. I mean, my
steak it is.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm probably going to go with steak. Oh, I was going to say when I do lomo saltado, I prefer Texas beef to Peruvian beef. My wife or Peruvians can say anything they want, but Texas beef is really good, especially if it's fresh. I mean, if
right.
They do things like carne seca where they'll actually dry it a little bit. I mean, charque actually is, that's a Quechua word. It's jerky. Beef jerky is actually Quechua. So the drying of beef here or in Peru is pretty common. But, like,
jerky.
Carne seca, that's a good dish. But as far as just fresh beef, I prefer Texas. I mean, beef. So I might do lomo saltado.
I have trouble eating brisket anywhere but Texas. So
yeah,
it's a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, I love brisket. I mean, the whole thing is like a lot of those. I saw one of your shows. You spent some time down here and went around. I mean, I get it, but I've smoked some, ribs and stuff, and it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. It is time consuming.
Hours out of your day, and unless you have like a couple bottles of wine and a couple of, a case of beer, and you're going to sit around and just keep doing that. I mean, geez, it's a lot. I'm waiting for my kids to get a little bigger, and then I get it. And I love the results. The results are incredible. But I mean, it's hard work.
It takes time. And you got, unless you're gonna cheat and get the electric smoker, you gotta pay attention.
No, I don't do stuff like that.
No,
the other thing is rotisserie chickens. What I will do a lot is rotisserie. I have a old Weber grill with the rotisserie on it. Rotisserie chickens are famous in Peru. It's like they're hamburgers. I mean, they came in, basically in the post-war era, like the late 40s, 50s. That's when you had Taco Bell and McDonald's and all that stuff. Well, in Peru, it was Johnny Schuler's father. I forget his name, but he came up with the first rotisserie chicken. And now in the evening in Peru, no matter where you are, any sort of small town or city, you're going to see people selling rotisserie chickens. And that's what they eat at night. And it's whole rotisserie.
Probably delicious.
Oh, they're incredible. And you just serve that with
had their
salad.
Head cut off 2 hours earlier.
Yeah. Free-range chicken is typically common, but they're delicious, and that's a whole nother thing. But I love rotisserie chicken. That I can grill because that's an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's no problem.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone needs to go get Eating Peru, Bradley's new book. Where can we go get the book?
Well, it's Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's in most of the big bookstores. I mean, anywhere you like. I wrote the book. I mean, the book does have, I think, close to 600 endnotes. So if you're a researcher or a food studies person and you want to call me on my sources, I love that. I love when people say, hey, where'd you get that? That's crazy. I'm like, okay, well, it's footnote number, blah, blah, blah. You go look it up. But you've got all the references in there. It's got a huge bibliography if you want to follow on. And but I wrote it for generally everybody. I mean, if you're just a backpacker going down to Peru for the summer, I think you could benefit. Or if you're a food studies scholar, you can benefit. So I mean, it's pretty open ended. I mean, it's like I said, it's all over at Amazon and Barnes and Noble and any place where they sell books, they can order it or they probably have it.
Awesome sauce. Also, the link is right down there, so you can go order the book right now. Get
Yeah,
Robert
thank you.
Bradley's book. It's amazing. If you can't make it to Peru, you can at least read the book and feel like you've gone. I'm just saying. Can we follow you anywhere on any socials? You got any socials we can stalk you at?
Yeah, I think I'm pre-Columbian Bob 77 on Instagram, and then I'm also Robert Bradley on. Yeah, pre-Columbian Bob's sort of my name that's stuck.
That's all.
But I'm
77.
also
Pre-Columbian Bob
right
77.
77.
Copy that.
That's the one I am
77.
at. And then I'm also on Facebook at just Robert Bradley. You actually see a picture of me with the down vest on and a hat, and I'm chewing coca actually. So
Shit, yeah.
yeah.
Well, maybe start Ziploc or vacuum sealing your tea next time you're coming back.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. That could actually get me in more trouble than, now that I think about that. But I do want to get at least a few leaves back so that I can make like coca sours here. I mean, the whole thing is coca.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Well, coca is tied up. I hate to say this, but it's tied up a lot with Coca-Cola, and because Coca-Cola had a horrible time with 1900, the company almost went out of business, and then the UN made coca leaves. Coca leaves are about as illegal as heroin. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Even though all throughout the Andes you can chew them, you can have a pound of coca leaves in your bag, and nobody cares. I mean, it's only if you put the leaves in kerosene and sulfuric acid, you start making a paste, which is
right.
yeah, then you're breaking the law. But I mean, but it's really funny. Like most tourists don't know that. I mean, in Cusco, if you come out of the airport, there's all these like little old ladies who are really sweet, and they're selling these little bags of coca leaves, and they're not very big, and they're selling them for like $3-4, maybe $5. And
Which is a lot of money for them,
it's
right?
crazy. I could buy for $5. I could go to the market in Cusco, a mile or two away, and I could buy a pound bag of leaves for like $3-4. Something like this. So, but the other thing is they don't sell it with yipta, or they don't sell it with cal, because when you chew coca, to leach out the vitamins, minerals, the trace amounts of cocaine, you have to chew it with an alkali. And the alkali is either wood ash or lime, the stuff that you put in your garden. And they don't sell it with that. And if you ask them, they'll say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, and unfortunately, most of the gringos that go there, they just have no idea. They go back to their room and chew coca leaves and go, wow, this is amazing, when nothing's really happening.
So just wood ash? You can literally just
wood ash. Yeah, you can use. But what they do is they have this thing called yipta, so they take the wood ash and mix it with gum, and it's a little ball, and you can bite it off in little pieces. Sometimes they'll put sugar in it. I don't particularly like that because I like the flavor of coca leaves. I don't like them having sugar, but sometimes they do that. The classical way is with lime, and they have these gourds, these wood gourds with a little pin in the top. You see them in the pre-Columbian era. They're in museums, but they make them even now, mostly in northern Peru. But you lick the pin and then you put it in with the lime, and you add it to the mash of the coca leaves, and over time it starts leaching everything out. It's like an art. It's like an acquired skill, but
a very tiny bit of lime.
Yeah, the lime can burn your mouth if you're not used to it. Yeah. Well, I have to say, when I give a class on chewing coca with my students, 99% of them hate it. They hate it. They don't want to ever do it again. It's cosmetically, it's not fun. You don't get really high. All you do is you're not thirsty. You're not hungry. It makes you want to walk. For me, I have asthma, and I do a lot of high altitude hiking. And to me, it opens my lungs up. It's really incredible. I feel so much better in the mountains than I do almost anywhere else. And I think the coca really helps.
Solid, sir. Well,
yeah, I'm sorry.
You've informed me. No, I would love to talk to you for another hour just about the coca leaf and the politics and the bullshit surrounding it. But I don't have that much time. But maybe next time.
Yeah, and let me know. You're going to Peru. I'll make some recommendations.
All right, sounds good, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, go get Robert Bradley's book, Eating Peru, and go follow him. Find him, follow him. Anyway, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Rashawn. It's a pleasure.
Awesome, and enjoy your steak.
Yeah, Thank you. I will. Not as much as
Awesome.
the ceviche, but you know.
Hey, the ceviche is killer. Awesome ceviche recipe in that book. Highly recommend. I'm gonna eat some more. Cheers.